Hey everyone, it's Charlie Morgan here, and in today's video I'm going to teach you how to reason from first principles. It's not a shiny topic. This is not a how to get the 10k a month in 2 months or what's the best offer or the best business model to use. I'm going to teach you how to think, and that's way more valuable and way more important than some shiny video that explains how to, looks max or something weird like that. I'm going to teach you a mental model that billionaires and idiosyncrasies and conquerors and the smartest, most successful people in the world, they use this model, and one of the common denominators of their thinking patterns is what I'm going to explain here. Like I said, it's not a shiny video, but it might be one of the most important things that you can learn to do. And so the reason this video is going to help you is because not many people are going to click on this because it's not shiny and it's not popular and current, but you're going to get an advantage from this video that very few people have. So I'm going to start by telling you that there's really two types of people in life. So let me get another pen. There's two types of people in life. We have people over here who reason from analogy, and we have people over here who reason from first principles. People who reason from analogy are usually poor, and people who reason from first principles are usually rich. When you look at any billionaire, and I actually mean any billionaire on the planet, except from those who inherited their wealth, people who built it themselves, this is the common denominator, the ability to reason from first principles. And the embarrassing thing is that you probably don't even know what the word means, let alone how to do it or how to use them. And that's fine, because I'm going to explain how to do it in this video. But a lot of people, they don't know how to do this. So reasoning from analogy is basically where you use your narratives to reason. And so, for example, if someone said to me, Charlie, eating meat gives you cancer, I could ask them why, and they could say, because I said so, or because someone told me it, or because that's what my dad told me, or because that's what the news said. When someone reasons from first principles, they can back their arguments up and back their logic up with core sound truth reasoning. And so the way the world works, and the way that reality works and manifests itself to us, this is reality, is there's really two types of reality. We have this one, and we have this one. So the red represents the objective. Oops. So this is objective reality. This is actually what's true. This is what's true in the world and what we can actually rely on to be factual and objective in the way the world actually works. And then we have the subjective. So people who reason from analogy reason from subjective reasoning. And what this basically means is they don't really think. They don't really actually stop to ask themselves what's true. And so what we're trying to do is, with life, we have our own subjective experience. We have our own subjective reality. Because I can tell you right now that the reality that I live and the way that I see the world is probably vastly different from the way that you see the world, or the way that your parents see the world, or the way that Jeff Bezos sees the world. And what you want to do is you want to have as much of this as you possibly can. And this is called a subjective overlap. And what this basically means is if we've got the truth here, the true objective real nature of the world, no matter how painful it is to digest and consume and think about, if this is the true nature of the world and this is our depiction of the world and what we want it to be, getting yourself over this line as much as possible is what matters. The more you can overlap your subjective experience and opinions with the true nature of the world, basically the more times you can actually be right, the more successful you're going to be. Wow, would you look at that? Well, it seems very obvious, but people don't look at this. And so the best tool that you can use to bridge this gap and to create the biggest overlap possible is basically first principles. And so a first principle, I'm just going to write this here. So a first principle is essentially a statement of truth that cannot be further questioned. This is an axiom, a foundation, a whatever you want to call it, a building block of knowledge. And a first principle basically means it's something you cannot further question. So, for example, if I told you the first principle of mathematics is that 1 + 1 = 2, or the first principle of the universe could be that time flows in one direction. These are things, statements of truth, that cannot be further questioned. Another example could be one of Newton's laws. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. There's no instance or no scenario that will ever exist where you can disprove that. And there's also no instance or no scenario where you can disprove that 1 + 1 = 2. And so when you're doing math and when you're doing mathematical calculations, or you're doing your profit or tax return, all of your reasoning to do with maths is built off of this first principle. And this is the one good thing that actually comes out of the school system. You can reason from first principles. Imagine if, for example, imagine that you're trying to, do a math complication, but, or you're doing a calculation, but you believe that 1 + 1 = 3. So if the first principle of maths is that 1 + 1 = 2, and you believe that 1 + 1 = 3, then any other mathematical calculation that you do is always going to be wrong. You're always going to mess it up because you got the first principle wrong. And I see this happening with people in the online business space these days over and over and over again, where the first principles they're operating from in business, in psychology, in mindset, in economics, in marketing, in sales, they're not operating on sound, reliable, fundamental truths that cannot be further questioned. And billionaires and very successful people, they constantly use these first principles. And if you get it wrong, everything else is wrong. So you need to know what you're dealing with. And the easiest way to know what you're dealing with is to boil it down to its core, most fundamental parts. There's a few examples that I'm going to give you here. The first one's obviously math. So, the first principle of math, there's a few of them, but it's that 1 + 1 = 2. And you know this to be true. And so when you're doing more advanced calculations than this one, you'll apply this rule and you'll assume this is true. And so if I asked you, what is 40 + 10, if you believe that 1 + 1 = 3, then you're not going to get 50 here because the fundamental truth that you believe to be true is out of alignment. Another example I can give you of first principles is in the English language. So in the English language, we have the alphabet, right? You should be familiar with this. We've got our A, B, and C. You've got your 25 or however, 26, 20, I don't even know how many letters are in the alphabet. How embarrassing is that? 25 or 26, you tell me. But we've got the alphabet. And that's painfully ironic, but you get the point. The thing is, if you don't know the alphabet, or if you've got the alphabet wrong and you think there's some weird letter that looks like that, and you're trying to structure words, then all of the words that you say are going to be wrong. All of the words that you use aren't going to make any sense to anyone because you're not operating on the first principle that's been universally agreed. We can all say the first principle of the English language is the alphabet because it's something that cannot be further questioned, that is universally used. And so when you're stringing together essays or sentences or videos or content, you're using your knowledge of the alphabet and reasoning everything out and extrapolating everything out from that. If you don't do that, your words don't make any sense and it's incomprehensible. So I can give you another example as well, and I'm actually going to get into some business stuff here. Let's look at weight loss. So when we look at fitness, really, well, let's put here fitness. What's the first principles of fitness? Now, if you want to be a fitness coach and you want to help people with their health and this, that, and the other, you better best be able to define this, because trying to help someone with their fitness but not understanding the first principles of fitness would be like trying to help someone solve a math problem but thinking 1 + 1 = 3. And I hope you get where I'm going with this. If you're not rooted in sound reason and logic, and your subjective experience is not heavily overlapped with the true objective nature of the thing, at least with the thing that you're dealing with and you are an expert in, you're going to be wrong about everything. Like if I came to you with the fitness thing, okay, so let's make it concrete. So for example, with fitness, if we want to lose weight, then we need to be in a deficit. And if we want to gain weight, then we need to be in a surplus. And you can't really argue beyond this, because this is thermodynamics. If you consume more calories than you burn, then you will gain weight. And if you burn more calories than you consume, then you will lose weight. And the rate at which you lose or gain depends on the extremity of that transaction or whatever's left of the surplus or deficit of that transaction. And so this is the first principle of fitness. And if you don't know this and you're a personal trainer, most personal trainers do, but if you don't know this and you're a personal trainer and you go in to try and help someone lose weight, everything you're going to do is wrong. It's like your kid comes to you and says, "Dad, what's like 9 times 3?" And you're like, "Oh, it must be 93 because if you don't know 1 + 1 = 2, you're not going to be able to reason anything beyond that." And so very successful entrepreneurs and billionaires, they use these things all the time. And honestly, it's building a big business from the stuff that I've learned and studied. I mean, I make about $20 million. I've made $20 million online. I make about 8 figures. So I've got loads, leaps and bounds to go before I'm a billionaire. I've got so much learning to do and stuff to do. But from the people that I've studied, what they do is when they're entering a new market or when they're entering a new realm or economic machine, the first thing they do is they ask themselves, what are the first principles of this market? So for example, if we look at Amazon, and we get into Amazon here, I'm just going to change the pen. So Jeff Bezos came into Amazon and he asked himself, like, what are the first principles that Amazon can use to become successful and build the biggest e-commerce monopoly on earth? And he realized that, like, he asked himself, like, okay, well, the first principle that I'm going to use is that in business it's all about the customer, because he learned that from Sam Walton in the book Made in America, which is a great book. You should check it out. So he operated on the first principle that everything is all about the customer. But then he took this one step further to say, what is fundamentally true about the customer and how can I use that to build the business? And upon looking at the customer, he realized that everyone wanted the fastest shipping. They wanted the fastest shipping, widest variety, and then they also wanted the lowest prices. And so what Jeff did is he looked at all the customers and all the patterns, and he realized that here are 3 statements of truth that cannot be further questioned. And what he then did is, the same way that you'd almost build a pyramid, he built the business up from these 3 first principles. Fastest shipping, widest variety, and lowest prices. And then Amazon's entire business philosophy and monopoly is built on these things that cannot be further questioned. And so if you get these wrong, and if you mess this up, then everything that you build on top of it is done. It's the whole, you can't build a house on sand thing. Well, these are the foundations. If the foundations of your reason and logic are flawed, misconstrued, deluded, then your entire life is going to be flawed, misconstrued, and deluded. These are the initial conditions. And so this is an example of a real-time business actually using one of the richest people in the world using exactly what I'm telling you to build a company. And so you can't find an example where a customer would not want these things. And that's why they're first principles, because you can't really further question them. You tell me one person that wants to have slower shipping, or less variety, or lower prices. If you found someone, it would be extremely anomalous, and therefore Jeff is going to use these to reason from. So I'll give you another example as well, from another billionaire that you may know and love. And that is Tesla. So Elon Musk, when Elon Musk went into the electric car market, there was a strong consensus or a strong belief system in the market that said that electric cars are never going to work. And the reason behind that, the analogy that everyone was reasoning from, all these car manufacturers were reasoning from the analogy that electric cars are never going to work because batteries are too expensive. And so when Elon Musk came into the market with Tesla, and when he basically came in, batteries cost $600 per kilowatt hour. I'm just going to make that slightly bigger for you. $600 per kilowatt hour. And so this was extremely inefficient. And the problem that Tesla faced in its conception or in its genesis, conception is not a pleasant word, in its genesis, was that batteries were just too expensive to make and run, and they'd have to sell cars at such a massive premium, and they wouldn't be able to break into the market. And this problem here existed on the analogy that everyone was just claiming the statement of truth, which is batteries are just too damn expensive. We can't build them cheaply. Blah blah blah. So Elon looked at this problem, and he looked at the battery was the problem. And so to solve a problem in business, you bring it back to its first principles. You ask yourself, what are the key components of this thing that make it up or cannot be further questioned, that are fundamentally true and that I just need to understand how it works? And so what Elon Musk did is he basically, he asked himself, okay, well, what are the first principles of a battery? Well, if you're building a car battery, you need cobalt, you need aluminium, you need nickel, you need copper, And there's a few more things. So what he did, and this is actually a true story, this is literally what he did, there's an example online of him doing this, is he asked himself, if I deconstruct this thing and I bring the problem back to its very first principles, like, what is it? Like, what is a battery at first principle? Well, it's really just a collection of materials. And it's the same thing with, like, buying an iPhone, for example. Like, you've got to realize that a business creates value. At least this is like a traditional business that creates a physical product. Businesses create value by assimilating and constructing core things together. So let me give you an example. So with an iPhone, you could build an iPhone. You could go and dig up the sand for the glass. You could go and dig up the metals needed for the battery. You could go and buy the silicone chip, and you could spend years trying to figure out how to put it together. You could buy the lens for the camera online and then code it all in and blah, blah. You could make an iPhone. It might take you your entire life. So it's a question, like, the reason Apple makes so much money is because what they've done is they figured out how to grab all of the first principles or the raw materials of the product and package them. And so the value for these companies, specifically these big physical product giants, comes from being able to pull together these first principles, like Amazon did, for example, with the fastest shipping, widest variety, and lowest prices, assimilating all of those core components into one product and doing it so that people don't have to is how the value is created, and that's why these companies make so much money. And so, it's kind of like what Elon Musk did is he looked at these core things and he found that these things here, they were cheap. Like, to get these things was not expensive. Like, mining the materials was not the problem. The problem came when manufacturers were putting them together. And the companies that were manufacturing the companies that were manufacturing all of these things together to make the battery were charging an obscene premium. And so what Elon Musk did is he basically contracted out the mining, and you could argue the morals and ethics of the cobalt mining and stuff, but whatever. He contracted out the mining of these things, and he built a system within Tesla that completely cut away the middleman for battery manufacturing. And what Elon Musk managed to do by using first principles and looking at what a battery truly was, and breaking down all the costs of he was like, what do I need to build a battery? He was like, I need maybe X amount of materials. Like, I need, maybe 15 different materials to build a battery. So he broke it down to the real thing. And then he asked, do I need the manufacturer? Do I need this? Do I need that? Do I need that? And he found that all the costs were associated with the manufacturing, because you still need the manufacturing to make it. But because this was a middleman, they were charging such a high premium. And this thing here, this was the cheap bit. So what Elon Musk managed to do with this example is, when he came into the electric car market, it cost $600 per kilowatt hour to run a car battery, or to buy one or effectively use one. And by the time that he was done, it now costs $8. So Elon Musk was able to get a pretty ridiculous amount of efficiency out of this system by reasoning from first principles and breaking this thing down into its core components. And when you learn to do that, you can do the same thing in your business. And if you actually know, if you're going to go into your brain and you're going to talk to me about mindset or belief systems or paradigms, if you can learn to do this, you will destroy everyone. You'll absolutely annihilate and destroy everyone. So let me give you some more examples. If we look at professional chefs, for example. So there's a Netflix documentary called Chef's Table, and it follows the culinary practice and the culinary talent of some of the most famous and successful chefs in the world. And one thing that I learned from watching this is what these chefs do. When people watch chefs and people who make incredible meals, they think it's about, the knives, or it's about the pans that they use. They think it's about the actual tools that they're using to do the job. And what I learned from Chef's Table and the professional chefs is what they do is they break food down to its first principle, and they just find the ingredients. And so a chef's job, really at first principle, is finding the best quality ingredients and the best combination of ingredients and putting them together to create something greater than the whole. That's what being a chef is, and that's what I learned from this. It's not about being able to have some fancy chopping technique or having some cool chopping board or throwing the salt off your forearm. It's not about that. It's about knowing which ingredients to use, finding and sourcing the best quality of them, and then knowing the combinations that work the best together. And this is the same thing with, for example, this is the best thing when you look at rappers. So when you look at rappers, arguably, you could get into all sorts of arguments as to who the best rapper that ever lived is, but I'm going to give you one example. Eminem. So Eminem, obviously very famous, very successful rapper, one of the best, in my opinion. Eminem used to, people think that rapping is about what car you have, or it's about your producer, or what studio you use, or who you hang out with, or how many watches you have. The rapper thing is really clouded these days. But Eminem, he used to basically study the dictionary. Because if you think about this, what's rapping? Well, it's just construing words together that rhyme, that tell a story or some sort of narrative. And so what's the first principle of rapping? Well, it's words. It's language. And so what Eminem did is he broke rapping down into its first principle and was what's the true raw input, the raw material of this thing? What is the cobalt, nickel, and aluminum? What is the cobalt, the aluminium, and the nickel to a battery? What's that to rapping? Well, it's words, because what do you do when you're rapping? You're just talking. Or you're singing, but you're singing words, right? And so what Eminem did is he focused on the words, and once he got really good at the words, and once he had the first principles in place where he had such a wide vocabulary of all the words that he could use, then he was able to assimilate them together. And that's the same thing with the chef. The chef's job is to source fantastic ingredients and to scientifically test combinations of those ingredients to see what creates the best culinary experience. And so what we're really doing when we're using first principles is we're going through a process of deconstruction and followed by reconstruction. And this is how you create something really good. And this is how you, this is basically how you innovate and how big scientific breakthroughs happen and how big business breakthroughs happen as well. For example, when you look at let's just take Uber, for example, another business example. Uber looked at the taxi market and they thought, okay, what's the first principle of the taxi market? It's cars. It's just having people to drive. And so what they did is they basically just gave everyone the power. They decentralized it and they deconstructed it to these people. And they did that using first principles and they did that using sound business principles. But what we're doing when we use these things is we're breaking something down to its core components and we are breaking it down to what is fundamentally true. And when I say what is fundamentally true, this can either be a physical object, like Elon Musk breaking the battery down into the core components, or like Eminem rapping down into all the different words that he can use, or the English language. You can do that with the physical form, but you can also do it with abstraction as well. So for example, if you ask me, what is the first principle of money? Well, it's value exchange. You can't really argue with that. To make money, you have to provide value. Now, yes, you can steal, but to make money long term, you have to provide value. That's an example of a business first principle that cannot be further questioned. You can't argue with it. You can't really find a business on the planet that adds value that doesn't make money, or that makes money without adding value. And value is subjective. There's all sorts of ways you can break this down. But there's lots and lots of these first principles that I use in my business that allow me to reason better. And like I said with the Amazon example, the better they are at the bottom, the stronger the structure will be as it rises. And so we're deconstructing and reconstructing because when you come into a market, there's usually inefficiencies and there's things that people are doing that don't make sense. A prime example I can give you is when I entered the how to book appointments online. So my business is called Imperium Acquisition. And what we do is we help agency owners, coaches, and consultants with client acquisition. And when I entered the market, we help with cold email and stuff like that. We have a program on it anyway, blah, blah, blah. When I entered the market, there was this massive consensus that you either have to do quality or quantity, and you have to do one or the other. And I looked at, the current space and what people were doing, and I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then I asked why. I was like, why does it have to be one or the other? Because I was talking to people in my market, in my competitors, and they were like, yeah, you either have to do quality or quantity. And I was like, why? And they were like, oh, just because you do. And I was like, here's an example of a market and a large market that is deluded because they're reasoning from analogy. And where you find a market where everyone's reasoning from analogy, you can just destroy them. Because all you have to do is bring it down to the first principles and then understand what is objectively true and then reason up from there and build your business around there when everybody else is in the lie, in their subjective, deluded reality, and you're actually in the truth and the objective, you'll steamroll the hell out of all of them. So I went in and I said, okay, so why do you have to do quality or quantity? Why? And they were like, because you have to, and I was like, you have to pick one or the other. I was like, why? Because that's how it works, how it's always done. And then I broke it down. I was like, okay, what is quality? Well, quality is obviously personalization, time and effort. And what is quantity? Well, it's volume at scale. And I was like, why don't we just do both? Why don't you just do quality? Why don't we figure out how to marry them? In chemistry, this is called alloying. You put two things together to make something greater. That's how steel is made, for example. And I was like, why don't we just do both? Like, why don't we figure out how to send mass personalization at scale? And we did. And we did that with Loom, and we got a whole strategy for that. And it's booked us tens of thousands of appointments and made our clients probably tens of millions of dollars. And that's just one example of me looking at something and deconstructing it into its core arguments, and then going all the way down to find the truth, and then reconstructing it. Another example I can give you that I use for appointment booking is Freud figured this out with psychology. Like, what is the first principle of the human condition? Like, what's the first principle of psychology? It's pain avoidance. You cannot, like, in any way, if you critically think this through, I've done this, trust me, I've done this for weeks. I've thought about it. You can't really get any deeper than that. You can't argue beyond that. Near enough every single thing we do as a human, nearly every action we take, is rooted some way, shape or form in pain avoidance. It's very seldom that we move towards pleasure. It's almost always the case that we move away from pain. And so when you understand the first principle, because really I'll explain how I did this for client acquisition, and this might be useful for you because this is how I built my business and made $10 million a year online. So my problem that I was solving for my clients was client acquisition. I can't even spell acquisition, that's terrible, isn't it? Right. So this is the problem I was solving. I was like, what is client acquisition? Well, really it's psychology. Because if we ask ourselves, what's a client's a human, and what's acquisition? Well, it's really conversion, it's convincing someone to do something. So really what it is psychology/persuasion. Okay? And basically what I did after breaking this down is I went all the way down through all the principles and all the layers of the human condition, and I kind of got to the bottom just to find that it's all about pain avoidance, right? It's all about pain avoidance. And so what I'm doing now with all my client acquisition systems is building them all on the fact that everyone just wants to avoid pain. And so when I'm selling, or when I'm building email systems, or when I'm making YouTube videos or YouTube ads, I'm always trying to solve a painful problem, because I know that if I can convince people that I can solve their pain and help them avoid pain, they will pay me to do more of it. And so what I've done is I've built my entire client acquisition paradigm and machine around this very thing here, because I know this is true. It cannot be further questioned. You cannot pull this apart at any deeper level than what I've pulled it apart. And I've tried, and Freud's tried, and Jung's tried, and Kant's tried, and lots of people have tried to do this throughout history, and nobody's been able to get beyond this thing. And so if you want to know what the first principle is for the thing that you're dealing with, you just usually go to the founding father. For example, in economics, Adam Smith, founding father, first principle of economics, supply and demand. You can't argue any further beyond that. Markets emerge because of supply and demand. It's a first principle. And so if you're building an economic machine, or you want to understand how to use economics in your business, you start with these first principles. Another first principle is the law of diminishing returns. It happens. You can't avoid it in economics. And so once I understood that pain avoidance was the core central thesis of psychology, and persuasive psychology at least, then I knew that the easiest way for me to acquire clients was to allude to the fact that I could help them avoid pain. And so everyone was focusing, when I came into the market and did this analysis, everyone was focused on like, oh, I've got so many testimonials, and I've got this offer, and I've got this thing. My cold emails and my way of doing this now is so focused and centralized around, I know your problem inside out. Because how does pain happen? It's a problem, right? And so if you want to solve pain for someone, you solve a problem. And so all of my messaging is focused on the problem, and it resonates harder with people. And where everyone is so focused on the offer and the copy, I'm just focused on the pain. The closer I get to this thing, the better it works. And so that's an example of how I've used a first principle to make money online. And there's hundreds and hundreds of cases of this happening throughout history, and people using this to make money. And I might have a couple other examples for you here. Let's see if I can think about it here. Yeah, so I gave you another one. So if you have an online business, or really any business, like, okay, well, let's think about this. What the hell is business? Like, what's a business at its first principle? Because if you don't know, like when you say I'm going to go and work on my business, it's like, well, you're going to work on what? Oh, I'm going to work on the business. I want to work on the business, not in it. But it's like, but what are you working on in the business? Oh, I'm just going to start doing some funnels and stuff. Like, that's not a business. So what we need to be able to do is extrapolate our core understandings, like, what is business and how do we know this to be true and what cannot be further questioned about it? Well, really, from 0 to maybe 100K a month online, this is for online businesses, right? Because that's my circle of competence. A business is really 3 things. It is acquisition, it is conversion, and it is value delivery. In order for you to make money online with a business, you need to book appointments or get traffic, close appointments or convert that traffic, and then deliver on the promise that you made to make this process happen. This is the first principle of business. You have 3 things. And so if you're going to work and you're working in your business every day and you're not working one of these 3 things, then you're fundamentally deluded. And this is kind of what I mean by understanding the core truth of the thing that you're dealing with. So you can break it down, you can deconstruct it, and then you can reconstruct it as a pyramid up towards something that actually resembles the truth. And that's what I've been doing. You know, it's not something that comes naturally. You have to learn to do this over time. But whenever I'm dealing with something and whenever I'm trying to solve a problem in my company or in my life, or when I enter something that's new, I will always try to seek the first principles first. The same way that if you're a child and you're trying to teach a child, or if you're a teacher and you're trying to teach a child math, you start with the easy thing, which is 1 + 1 = 2, or 2 × 2 = 4, or multiplication is something times by itself. You start with the rules. And the problem with people these days is they don't have the humility to start with the basics and start with the rules. And so, for example, something that I'm going to learn in the near future probably is I need to learn some more advanced accounting knowledge. And I know some bits and pieces about accounting, but like when I do it, I want to start with the first principles and then I'm going to reason up from there. So that's how billionaires do it. This is the difference between someone who makes a little bit of money and has a small business and someone who's like absolutely destroying everyone. It's really this, and this should give you a lot of clarity and thought on how to do it. So yeah, bye.